Recording in progress.
Good evening. Welcome to the South Burlington Development Review Board of January 17th, 2024. My name is Dawn Philibert. I'm the chair of the board, and I'd like to introduce the other members of the board. Stephanie Wyman, Charlie Johnston, thank you. Frank Kochman, Mark Muscatelli. I have a tough time with John, sorry. Well, you're both in red. Come on. Mark Bear and Quinn Mann. And to my side here are our staff members, Marla Keene and Marty Gillies. I have a little trouble with names tonight, and other nights. This meeting is being recorded, and there are a couple of ways to participate. One is to attend in person, as you are doing. Another way is to attend virtually, and people can also call in and listen to the meeting. If you are here, please make sure you sign up at the sign-in sheet in the back of the room. If you're attending virtually, please send us your contact information. I need some notes here. Contact information so that we have a record of you. Maybe I don't have those notes. We have a record of you participating. And if you're on the phone, please send an email registering your participation to, I don't have my notes. What's your email?
Sorry, it's mkeene, MKEENE at sbvt.gov.
Thank you.
My microphone wasn't on at all.
Try that again.
Let's try that again with the microphone on this time. Send an email if you're participating by phone or virtually if you prefer to myself, Marla Keene, MKEENE at sbvt.gov.
Thank you, Marla. I feel lost without my notes. What am I forgetting tonight?
So we'll start with emergency evacuation procedures?
Sure, thank you. I don't have my agenda in front of me. So let's talk about evacuation procedures. In the event of an emergency, there are 2 exits at the back of the room. In case you needed to evacuate, you would exit those doors and go either left or right, and you would be outside. Are there any announcements? Hearing none. Are there any changes to the agenda? Oh, hearing none. Are there any public comments that do not relate to one of the applications being reviewed tonight? Okay. I think we're ready to hear from the applicant for the next. I'm sorry, I feel lost without my agenda.
So Marty's pulled it up.
Oh, good. Thank you, Marty. Okay. All right. Thank you, Marty. MP 2301, and I will read that. The continued master plan application MP 2301 of John Larkin, Inc., to establish a master plan for an approximately 40-acre existing PUD consisting of 270 residential units in 8 multifamily buildings a 20,000 square foot movie theater, a 22,500 square foot restaurant and medical office building, and a 3,500 square foot restaurant with a drive-through. The master plan includes 4 phases and consists of adding approximately 92,105 square feet of commercial space, including a 110-room hotel, approximately 281 homes in multifamily and mixed-use buildings, 6 homes in 2 family buildings, approximately 5 acres of programmed and passive open space, and extending a city street at 1185 Shelburne Road. Who is here for the applicant?
I'm Greg Dixon, the civil engineer on the project from Krebs and Lansing.
Okay, thank you.
Ella Braco.
The bright green
Yep.
light needs to be on.
Ella Braco with Wagner Hodgson, landscape architecture.
Thank you.
And Jeff Hodson with Wagner Hodson.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joe. I'm going to swear you in. Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear that the information you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Good to see you again. Yes,
Before we get started, I'm recused.
pardon me.
I'm recused from
Okay,
this application.
thank you, Stephanie. So you know the drill. We go through the staff report and we address the comments that are highlighted in red, and we ask. You've already seen them. We ask for your thoughts about them, or your answer, or whatever, or your commitment in some cases, and we are allocating an hour to this hearing. If we don't get through everything, we'll reschedule another meeting date to complete it. So I'm wondering, before we start going through the staff report, are there any introductory comments you would like to make?
No.
Okay.
So,
Okay, I've got to call up the report. Give me a minute, please. This is not my night for technology.
Do you want me to just start pulling up the red
That would be
comments
great.
one at a time?
That's great. Yeah, I will have mine here. But
And just so you know, Marty is the staff person for this one. I'm driving
Okay.
the screen. Oh, several pages in, huh? Before we get to number 1.
It's page 5.
All right. Well, if
Thanks.
anybody had anything on pages 1 through 4, just go ahead and shout.
okay, number 1, staff recommends the board review these comments, those comments, and if board concurs that the submitted application material is either incomplete or incorrect, require the applicant to modify their submission as indicated so that the submission can be considered a portion of the approved plan for the project. You're
Comment on that.
okay, sure. No comment. Okay, good. Thank you. Number 2, staff recommends the board confirm with the applicant whether any such projects are proposed.
So I believe this has to do with stormwater, and we will continue to coordinate with the city stormwater, and like we have been the entire time.
Okay.
I don't think that really answers the question. Are there any projects impacting natural resources proposed?
Not from our project. Did ask a little bit about the stormwater project that is also going on, but I don't have any information about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You might want to pull it a little closer so we can all hear. I now have my notes, so. So there are no other projects.
Our project is not affecting natural resources. I believe that is the answer or the question.
Does that answer the question for us, board?
I mean, I think our thought is just if there's flow restoration projects in the area, you would have to either be, working with those ones or taking them into account. I'm just wondering if you're aware of any flow restoration projects planned for that area and you're coordinating, as you said you've been doing with the stormwater section. Have you heard of anything yet?
we have had preliminary conversations with them, but they do not have a design yet. So I don't know if there's any natural resource problems with that or not, but we are going to continue to coordinate with them.
Okay. And at this time, you're not anticipating that you would have to like alter the design of your master plan to accommodate any proposed city flow restoration projects.
So our first meeting was sort of to at least outline where we had planned to put improvements
Yeah.
and coordinate with them to have our improvements be separate from the stormwater improvements so they kind of collaborate. But I envision there'll be continued collaboration.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, number 3, we need a conceptual subdivision plan.
So we are not proposing any subdivision at this time. So we don't have a subdivision plan.
I think I think we were talking about that. We think you have to. Like the real road parcel right now ends at the stub, and you're proposing to continue it all the way down to
So
the south property line. So
the not the subdivision, the boundary line adjustment that we did in 2017 extended Rio Road, so it is on that plat.
yeah, and the other one that we flagged was the proposed duplexes are right now just on one lot, which is no longer permissible as per the LDRs. So that would have to be they'd have to be subdivided on their individual lots.
Could they not be condoized? They can't be.
Under our current LDRs, unless it's a single user complex, so like a garage and a home, each principal structure has to be on its own lot. The same would be true for the main body of the development area.
Yeah, I think that most of the phased developments, like within Larkin Terrace, are already on individual pieces. But the duplex kind of section, and maybe also the micro units, might be just buildings proposed on existing lots, which would need to be subdivided out just to put the building in, as per like the new LDRs, which are requiring, like Marla said, primary structures to be on their own lots.
Okay.
So can we expect a conceptual
Yes.
subdivision plan? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Questions from the board? Okay.
Can you turn your mic on?
After questioning you, how about that? I'm a little. Do you want to discuss 4 now?
Well, that's the next one, so
Yeah,
let's go
okay.
ahead. This is about whether we're going to waive preliminary plat review.
Yeah, my inclination is not to do that. Master plans usually don't contain the same kind of detail as preliminary plat does,
And we're fine with that.
Okay. Other comments from the board? No? Okay, number 5. I'm going to read this. Staff recommends the board waive preliminary and final plat for projects not involving subdivision of land and instead allow site plan review for the implementation of the described phases, with the caveat that sketch plan and preliminary plat shall be required should a subsequent application be inconsistent with the findings of this master plan approval, including substantial deviation from approved plans. If the applicant's subdivision or site plan applications differ substantially from the plans submitted as part of this master plan application, the applicant may have to formally amend this master plan prior to approval of these substantially different applications.
We're okay with that.
Okay, thank you.
well, you're okay with what? I mean, is the board okay with waiving preliminary and final plat for projects not involving subdivision of land?
Well, we're okay with not waiving it. I think if it sounds like the board from your last comment is not okay with waiving those things, so we're all right with that.
Okay.
Well,
So you will come back to us with a preliminary plat.
Correct.
Well, I think this is 2 separate.
Yeah, these are 2 separate things.
Yeah. There's
Recommending we waive preliminary and final plat for projects not involving
Can you turn your mic on?
Boy, this whole microphone thing tonight. No, I mean, staff is recommending to the board that we do waive preliminary and final plat for projects, you know, and instead allow site plan review for the implementation of the prescribed phases.
And I think we just discussed that a plat and is required. Therefore, I don't think we can waive it.
Frank didn't want to waive it.
Okay.
So okay, well, just to jump in here. So we're saying that for the subdivision of land, that was comment 4, and we were recommending the board discuss whether to waive preliminary plat for a subdivision of land. Frank indicated he didn't want to do that. The rest of the board agreed. You said that's not a big deal for you. That's fine. Question 5, comment 5 is all amendments to a PUD are technically subdivisions. Or they need to be reviewed as plats. And so we're just wondering, it would have to go preliminary plat, final plat, and then site plan. And we are saying that because we're doing this master plan process for those technical subdivisions, which don't actually include subdivisions of land for the plat applications, the question is to the board, not really to the applicant. Is it okay to waive preliminary and final subdivision for things that you know are coming in as site plans, given that those things won't include a subdivision of land? That's the applicant, or that's the question for you as a board to discuss.
Unless they are substantially different than what's in the master plan.
Correct. Yeah. That's the second sentence.
And,
Yeah.
and I again have essentially the same objection. Master plans simply don't have the level of detail that a preliminary plat does with respect to buildings, for example. A site plan, if a master plan is sketchy, says a 5-story building, I don't know, for the sake of something, and they come in with a site plan that shows 5-story building, and then skip to a final plan that has all sorts of detail on it that involve other aspects of the project, other aspects of the LDR. Don't we have an interest in knowing what those other aspects are going to be before we get to final plat? That's one way to frame the question. That's what I'm getting at. That to say a site plan doesn't differ materially, doesn't matter much if there's not enough detail in the master plan itself, which there frequently isn't, to be meaningful. And I don't know, does the board, anybody, I'm open to different feelings about it, but that's how it seems to me.
Board members?
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of inclined to say that, you know, typically the master plan does include quite a bit of detail that, you know, you can sort of take and do the, I guess, the smell test between approved master plan and what they're submitting for final site plan to see that it is kind of apples to apples. And if it's apples to oranges, we say you got to go back and submit, you know, for full review and amend it.
Well, you know, does a master plan show us building facades, for example?
Yeah, I guess the risk is really on them, right? If they come to us with something completely different and
Right.
we
Well, it's
deny
not a.
it, then, right?
Okay, I mean, I'll say it one more time, and then I'll be content that I made my point. A master plan might have something as non-specific as 5-story building, with no and still pass muster as a master plan. If they come in with a site plan that says 5-story building, then they're complying with the master plan, right? And all the more involved detail that would be shown on a preliminary plat is skipped over.
Right, but at that point, that's their risk because we're then reviewing the elevations for compliance, and if there's any changes, they've invested the design time that by going straight to final, and it's really at their risk to jump ahead.
I'll go with
We're not removing any review criteria that we inherently have authority over.
All right. I mean,
You know, that's
you don't
that's,
need my.
well.
I'm
just
raising
saying,
the issue, but I'll go with.
I'm
the
just
sense
saying
of the board,
we've
right?
always as a board given the applicant guidance and direction to combine like preliminary and final together at their risk, because we're still going to review it with all the level of review. And if we have substantive changes based on our review, they're taking the financial risk that they have to go and amend plans that they've already spent quite a bit of expense on. So therefore, we're not losing any review authority, and it's all on them. So it behooves them to present something in master plan that they are planning on proceeding with, that's going to be in compliance with our regulations for each of the subsequent phases.
Well, they may not know at this point.
I think
And they have something.
that's the intent of the master plan.
Well, let me put it to the applicant. How do you feel about it? Do you benefit from a preliminary plat, from a preliminary plan, or would you just as soon skip it and roll the dice on the final?
I think I thought that the whole reason for the master plan was to give the board kind of a blueprint for the whole development so that we could go right to site plan. But
Right, that's the big advantage of a master plan. That's sort of the
Yeah.
carrot that goes with the stick. And so if you choose to not request anything like that, then I guess there's a couple carrots. One is the sort of getting pre-approval for certain aspects of the project, investing in the regulations applicable at the time you got your master plan, and then the other is getting process waivers. And so if you're not requesting any process waivers, you're leaving something on the table. But you don't have to.
Quinn, you look like you-
Yeah, so I'm just, is the idea if we say we would waive sketch and preliminary, the applicant could come in if they wanted to still, like if they saw a benefit to it and they had some changes and they wanted to come at preliminary, they could. Like us saying we're waiving it gives them the option not to, but they could still, if that was going to be a benefit to them at a certain phase.
yeah,
Maybe that's implied, but I just wanted
no,
to.
that's a good point. I think
Yeah.
if one particular parcel, we had a lot of questions about, it might make sense to come in. So
Yeah.
if we could choose, that would be great. But
Does it allow for like us granting a
Yeah,
waiver?
you'd just be
if
waiving
you-
the requirement, but
Yeah.
you wouldn't be waiving
Right.
the whole process entirely.
Right. I mean, that's what I agree that the master plan process has benefits. I think, the applicant understands the risk of jumping ahead in that way. And as long as they keep it in mind that they have the option to come to us with a preliminary, I think that's kind of the best of both worlds. So that's where I would be on it.
Okay, are we ready to move on? Number 6, staff considers that the applicant has not made a request to, proceed directly to zoning permit for any portion of the proposed development. Staff recommends that the board and applicant discuss this process waiver and whether the applicant would like to request such a process waiver from the board. I wasn't quite sure what a process waiver is, and I will admit that I didn't look it up, so.
Sure, it's just the same thing as what we did earlier, like skipping a step or two. This is the same thing. I think Beta took advantage of this in their master plan where they skipped straight to zoning permit for some certain minor items like the ones listed here. So it's available if you want it, but I believe process dictates that you have to request it from the board, then the board has to grant it.
Yeah, we're not requesting it.
Thank you. Number 7, staff recommends the board revisit this section for concurrence after reviewing the remainder of the staff report, identifying any further aspects of the master plan that should be vested. So I guess we'll come back to that.
So this is the other big thing that the applicant gets from a master plan. And I think that, because this is only our second, third master plan under these rules, I just want to emphasize that vesting of certain elements is sort of the big deal of a master plan. And it's important to get those things so that both the board can feel comfortable that the things the applicant proposed are fixed, and the applicant can feel comfortable that the board's not going to question things that they proposed at the master plan level.
So this list that you see on the screen was developed by staff of stuff that we thought is kind of locked in and sort of non-controversial, kind of black and white. But it's certainly the list is flexible, and if you want to add things to that list or remove things from that list, either the board or the applicant, it's your document. So just wanted to kind of put that out there as comment 7, just kind of flagging that as sort of, like Marla said, one of the big carrots of the master plan, and we're hoping to take full advantage of it. So at the end of this review, we want to come back and, see if we want to add anything or remove anything from this list.
Thank you.
I have a question. My general understanding of the vesting doctrine is that they're, at least as to anything they're showing, well, no, my understanding is across the board, they're vested according to the regulations in effect at the time they apply, and that would apply to building heights as well. Whatever is allowed by the May 15th, 2023 regulations is what's allowed. Period. I don't know how you justify the distinction.
Like in certain zoning districts, there's like a maximum difference between, for example, between like stories. Like neighboring parcels within the same zoning district can't be more than 1 story different. But because this is a PUD, there's some latitude to kind of waive or amend certain regulations, and so we would just be sort of.
I don't get it.
I think what's happening is we're basically saying that with the approval of the master plan, we're vesting the overall project with the regulations that are in fact enforced at the time of the approval, which we're saying is May 15th for the LDRs adopted May 15th, 2023. So when they come in with subsequent site plans for various phases on the project, they are under the admonishment of the LDRs in force at that time, not ones that may be changed in later time. Like if the project takes 3 or 4, 5, 7 years, they are under the LDRs of May 15th, 2023, not LDRs of June 2026.
And I think that's the law,
Yeah.
I think. But it has to do not with, by the way, when we approve the master plan, but when they applied. Have you applied? Is there a master plan in front
Correct.
of us?
It's under the application when they get in, and
So
This,
that
this
controls
is the master plan.
that controls right.
they're vested under the current LDRs.
That
No,
controls everything.
Exactly. There's
Not-
been a new LDR since then, but it's fine. We can ignore that one.
Right. Yeah, one's in the
Yeah.
noted. Fine.
That controls everything, not just certain aspects of the project. And specifically, it controls building heights.
I think there's 2 things being conflated here. One is the regulations that the application is vested under, and one is aspects of the project, characteristics of the project that are approved. So so vesting may not be the right word, but the project involves a proposed street layout. And if the board says that the master plan approves the proposed street layout, then the applicant can rely on the board not questioning the proposed street layout in phase 3 or whatever. And the board can rely on the applicant not changing the proposed street layout in phase 3. You don't have to say the master plan approves the proposed street layout, but we're recommending, because that's an item that there hasn't really been any concern about from either party, that's one of the things you say that, yeah, that looks good.
Basically, we're getting a big overall picture look at what the applicant's proposing for a very large area of South Burlington. And with our review and let's just say ultimate approval of the master plan, the applicant has confidence that they can move forward with their business plan for developing these lots over a course of several years without concern that we're suddenly going to change our mind and say, we don't want that building in that location.
Right.
That's what the vested rights we're looking at granting these areas. And what the staff has given is about 8 or 7 or 8, 9 items, and we may add more to them before we ultimately approve the master plan.
We seem to be speaking at odds, and I'll only say it one more time, and then we can let it float along. The law in effect at the time they make the application, which is the LDRs of May 15th, 2023, controls the project. We don't get to pick and choose which aspects of the project it controls, in my view.
You're right. I think we're talking in circles because when we ultimately approve the master plan, we're approving a conceptual design for the overall development that the LDRs might lean towards, but we ultimately as a board and the applicant submits, we ultimately approve and the applicant submits that we're signing off on. So there's,
So I-
if you don't have the LDR, yes, the LDRs are the rule law of the land, but then why have a board to review and sign off on things?
We're reviewing and signing off in accordance with the law in effect on May 15th, 2023. That's what I'm saying.
Right. I don't know if this is helpful, but so like the LDRs that they're vested under is the umbrella, and then elements that they've proposed under the master plan are more detailed things under that umbrella, but they still comply with that master plan. So this list is the things under that umbrella that are more detailed than just the LDRs, but they
Right.
comply with the LDRs. So we're not getting rid of that
Right.
that highest umbrella. These things just are more specific under that they've presented in their master plan.
Yeah.
Does that help?
We don't need to flog it
Okay.
anymore. Fred.
I think the horse died a while ago.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to number 7. Staff considers that reduced front and side setbacks are likely appropriate in this case and recommends that the board and applicant identify a distance to which each of those minimum setbacks should be reduced. Have you had a chance to think about that?
Yes, we're requesting to waive the internal side yard setbacks, which is, we have a central spine pedestrian corridor where we might have some landscape walls, and so we just want those internal side yard setbacks waived. And then in terms of front yard setbacks, we are proposing 10 feet minimum along Shelburne and Fayette Road, with the intent to still be to do what we showed, which is to kind of match or align with existing buildings, which might be more like 18 feet, but we're just asking for 10 to give ourselves some flexibility. And then along Real Road, we have some pinch points, so we're asking for a 1 foot setback, with the intent that we would provide some variation along that. And then the external side yard setbacks we can abide by.
Board, what are your thoughts?
I'm fine with them.
So there's a maximum setback waiver allowable, right? Or is that gone? Am I remembering an old set of the rules?
I'll have to double check because I know that in certain circumstances the board can waive, like in Article 3, the board can waive setbacks down to a certain point. You can't waive it to 0. But in outside of Article 3, if we're talking like master plan stuff, I'm not certain if it defers to Article 3 or if there's separate language that allows it to go all the way to 0 in the board's waiver authority.
So given that this is going to have to be continued to get a subdivision plan, my recommendation is to understand their request and provide some feedback on it.
Sure.
Okay.
Does the board have any questions about their request before we research it?
I didn't have any concerns with the items they outlined.
So we'll put a pin in that. Okay, number 9, staff considers the increased front setback is likely appropriate in this case and recommends that the board and applicant identify an amount to which this maximum coverage should be increased.
So we would like to increase that to an allowance of 90%.
Okay. Thoughts, board?
So I'm okay with that 90%. It just seems a bit extreme compared to the district is typically 30%. I mean, I'm okay with the 90 because it's in line with the building that's out there, which I think is an extremely successful building. And I know the intention is to continue with that pattern of development. I'm just wondering where that split has occurred from our LDRs and what we're actually encouraging and wanting to see.
I think it's because we're bringing the building so far forward. Like normally if you had a deep setback, there would be quite a bit of green space.
Right.
So, and I don't think we'll actually
Hit 90%.
get to 90%. It'll probably be more like 70, 75. But we just want to kind of have maximum flexibility.
Yeah, we had 90% written into the state stormwater permit for that area as a maximum. We don't believe we'll get to that level, but we were just trying to find consistency with that stormwater permit.
Comments, board? Questions?
So,
Hang on a second.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark, are you concurring with the applicant's judgment? Because I intend to defer to your judgment.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that, well, my only question wasn't questioning the applicant, it was more questioning our regulations call for 30%. They're asking for 90, which I can see why they're asking for 90, and I agree, because I think if they're using the first building that was developed as sort of the standard for what they're going to be doing, I can see why 90%. I'm just questioning, why is that split between our regulations and here, and do we want to look at making it so that the applicant doesn't have to come in and ask for 90% when 30%, so the regulations, do we want to look at adjusting our regulations for specific targeted areas?
I think like the difference, like they're proposing almost kind of like a city center Market Street vibe, and there is no, as you know, there's no front setback coverage here.
Okay.
The front setback coverage applies to the C1 R15, and because of the nature of their PUD, that's why they would ask for the waiver. But typically, we're looking at like auto dealerships and kind of bigger box store type things, and you kind of want the front yard vibe. That's what the rules say. So the reason that they wouldn't want that is because they're doing something in a PUD.
It's a case by case basis. You presented why, and we as a board,
And it's also the same, basically the same area, right? 30% of 30 feet, 9 feet.
right. Yeah, that's
Percent
true.
of 10 feet is 9 feet.
You've done the math. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm
Okay.
fine with the request.
Number 10, staff considers that increased overall and building coverage is likely appropriate in this case and recommends that the board and applicant identify an amount to which this maximum coverage should be increased for individual lots within the PUD.
So very similar to sort of my last comment, there will be some areas that we're going to ask for the 90% allowance again for this.
And Marla had reminded me just a couple of seconds ago that if the board isn't comfortable with the blanket waiver at the master plan level, you can defer and you can go through this on a site plan by site plan basis. But if you're happy with 90%, that's totally fine too. Just wanted to make sure we were aware of that option.
I think the 90% also is tied to the master plan application that they're submitting, which is not showing 90%. So it's like we're giving them up to 90, but we're seeing, on the master plan site plan review that, the current plan that we're seeing that is definitely not a 90% building coverage. So, I mean,
so are you saying you'd be more comfortable with granting a waiver now that represented what's shown on the plans, and then considering a higher waiver at a later stage of review?
that's probably a safer way of saying yes. I mean, honestly, I'm fine with what we're seeing, and if the applicant's just asking for a number that gives them the flexibility of not having to do the calculations on a lot by lot basis,
I mean, we can still give you those calculations when
why
we
don't you
come
give
for
us those
site plan.
calculations? Yeah.
But what we're saying is that some of those buildings close to Shelburne Road could be up close to 90%.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So couldn't we do just site by site instead of the entire
Yeah.
application?
Yeah.
That's what I would prefer, right? Because I think there are some places that
Obviously, aren't
Right,
going to be
yeah.
even close.
I mean,
remotely
basically,
close
we're
to
going through this as a master plan review, and I think what I'm saying as we go through the review, we have to be all comfortable. But what I'm seeing in the plans we've reviewed to date, I'm okay with, and we need to refine that. So, whatever the changes and waivers and adjustments we need to do, I want to make sure that we do them, but we do them so that we're approving it to what we're seeing, not giving sort of like a blanket approval that takes away from the control we see on the screen before. I'm looking at the plan, not the words. So
That would be my preference as well, case, or lot by lot, for this particular waiver.
And just to clarify, the previous waiver, we're okay with the blanket?
Yeah.
And this one we want site plan by site plan.
because I think that's a different type of criteria than what we're going to get from a site plan.
Sure. Yeah, just want to make sure I have my notes right.
Okay, thank you. Number 11, staff recommends the board include a condition of approval that the applicant update sheet C-3 to include existing and planned transit routes.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Could you roll it down to number 11?
Yeah, I was gonna try and do a little side by side. Just a second. That's not a good side by side. Okay.
Are we ready to move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll try to pull up a better plan meanwhile.
Number 12, this is about the vehicle drop-off area, and the staff sense was that its present is not in keeping with the intent of the LDRs and the rest of this master plan proposal.
Yeah, I think the plan that we're showing right now is just a concept, and we'd
Okay.
be happy to revisit it. We just think it's a site plan review issue.
Okay. So you'll understand the concern.
We understand
Okay.
the concern. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Comments, questions?
Yeah, I think just that this kind of goes to the nature of, I think, probably kind of Frank's concerns and my hopeful, plan for this is that just showing a kind of a concept at this stage compared to wanting to approve a final master plan. These are some of the details that we kind of want hashed out that more meet the regulations so that we don't see something so different that it is inherently different than what we're approving at the master plan.
Yeah. I mean, our understanding is that this doesn't violate the regulations. It just is maybe not the intent of the regulations, and it might be a question of scale, or we just might have more information once we understand the occupants of that building too.
Yeah, and once we have an architect on board,
Yeah.
to actually design the building with us, so.
Yeah, so it sounds, again, just to kind of repeat what's said, but at this point in time, you guys understand the concern and will be prepared to answer these types of questions when you come in for that particular parcel. And yeah, okay, great.
Okay, great. Number 13, it relates to slopes. And I'm wondering your thoughts about the staff comment.
Yeah, I believe the majority of the steep slopes kind of surround the natural resource, which we are avoiding as part of this project, as discussed in earlier sections. I think as far as protection, our biggest protection is avoidance. And then further protections would probably come from the erosion prevention and sediment control plans for each individual site plan, which we can address during site plan.
Okay. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I think on that one, I just was noting like you had, so the city regulations identify like a certain number of environmental hazards and natural resources, and you had identified each and every one of those that were on your property except steep slopes. And maybe it's a little bit redundant to have you call out the steep slopes if all the steep slopes are within the river corridor, but that is an ask of the land development regulations. And I just was wondering if you had done the analysis and realized, that we don't have any, or if you just hadn't done the analysis yet. So that was the point of this comment.
No, so we did the analysis, and it was pretty much all in that area, and the plan was starting to get a little messy. So we were gonna add a note. Maybe that note just got deleted, but all those steep slopes are pretty much in that river corridor.
Sure. And if you wanted to add a supplemental sheet, that way we can just take our box and say the applicant did assess this natural resource or / environmental hazard, and then you could just do like a C101, and we could append that or whatever, so that we have it for the record. But
Yeah, if staff and the board feel that's
Yeah, I would just echo that as well, because when we were talking about the elements we might vest, it was natural resource impacts, right? So if that's something we want to vest as far as your impacts moving forward, just having that really clear, I think, is helpful. So if you guys have the analysis, can provide the sheet, I think it'll be helpful to have. Person.
Great. Number 14, this is regarding street name approval.
we're okay with what was
Okay. Thank you.
suggested.
Number 15, this is regarding the bike ped connection to the west. Now, I have a question about this. It's the last few words are, and the proposed development to the west. I assume you were referring to the development, proposed development where we went on a site visit.
Farrell, yeah.
What is it?
The Farrell waterfront.
Farrell,
Yeah,
thank you.
Allenwood.
Is that really to the west or to the south?
That's a good point. I think the development area is kind of more south. You're right. It's down the road a little bit, but technically the whole parcel.
Right.
Okay,
But you're right that the development area would be more south than west,
Okay.
probably.
thank you. So what are your thoughts about this?
We're happy to have that in-road be informally used as a bike path and pedestrian path. I don't know if that fully answers the question.
I think I brought this up just because at Sketch and also at the Farrell sketch, we were sort of focusing, kind of honing in on this, maybe a bike path connection between the two. And based on comments from our DPW and from the applicant here, it seems like maybe it's not the most feasible. And so, I guess that kind of kicks the can a little bit, but it does seem like it's a tricky spot where the river corridor goes across the entire length of the property, and you can't develop new impervious in a natural resource like that. So they would not be able to build a new, separate, non-connected bike path, kind of leaving usage of the existing paved inroad as the only sort of access. It's not kind of what had been brought up in Sketch. Kind of Sketch was sort of a little bit more idealistic, but DPW doesn't want to maintain another railroad crossing, and the applicant is constrained by the existing natural resources on the property. So I know that was something that we had talked about, and just wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to review sort of the newer, less formalized plans that people could still bike that way. It just wouldn't be on a protected bike path.
Marla, could you orient us on this site plan you have up, or another one? We're looking at the in-road, right, as the only.
Right. Should I
Potential.
go back to the
Well,
one that's
I mean-
more zoomed out?
I mean, the inroads on this one, it's kind of the windy gray road
The
through the
windy one,
neighborhood
okay.
park.
Yep.
Yeah. So they're proposing kind of parking and then a vehicle turnaround on the east side of it, and then it would be private access only, like for the one house that's
Yeah.
proposed down there right now. So,
Yeah, and I think actually the drive is gated at the railroad tracks, though.
yeah, I think my understanding. I mean,
I don't know what they're
it's
planning.
preliminary right now, but I heard the gate will be moving to the other side of the railroad tracks.
Okay.
But I guess that if the development goes forward, so that's.
Okay, number 16. This is regarding utility improvements, and we're interested in what kinds of above-ground infrastructure may be required to support this development.
Yeah, we don't right now foresee the need for like a large substation, like electrical substation. We do imagine there will be some pad or vault mounted transformers that will be kind of located during site plan when we evaluate where those are needed. I kind of maybe some other sort of communications vaults and stuff like that would probably be the limit of the above ground.
But nothing at this time. You're anticipating that you would put on the plans, and we would say, "Whoa, go back and redo your master plan. This is crazy."
I don't believe so. No.
Okay.
As long as you're okay with like a transformer vault.
Questions? I see shaking heads, so that's good. 17. Are blocks proposed?
So we are not proposing any blocks. There is sort of, by definition of blocks, an existing block that is in the project, and that's sort of blocked out by Shelburne Road, Fayette Road, and what will be Real Road, and then Slip Road. But we're not proposing any. That kind of already exists.
Questions? Number 18.
Can we just hold up on that one for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, I guess just when Marla and I were looking at it, we were thinking, since Larkin Terrace doesn't exist all the way yet, and Slip Road doesn't really exist at all, we were thinking maybe this does constitute the creation of maybe 2 blocks, being Fayette, Shelburne, Slip, Larkin, and then Slip, Larkin, Fayette, Real. Because if they're not proposed to exist, they don't really exist, today in the sense that you can't circulate. And just wanted to flag for you at this stage that probably we would consider those to be new blocks, and that new blocks would have to meet the subdivision standards for blocks which are listed above. So just kind of putting this on your radar is, hey, we know you said you weren't creating new blocks, but maybe we would technically disagree. And if we were going to technically disagree, we would require the new blocks to meet the standards. And I did some quick measurements and it looks like they're fine, but I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that requirement.
Yeah, we went back and did the same calculations, and it seems like it works.
Yeah, it's just good intuitive design, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, good. Moving on to 18. A little comment above. The applicant appears to have, pardon me, included neighborhood park in the non-buildable area row. So this really is about asking for a correction.
Yep, we can correct that.
Thank you. Number 19. Trip generation data. We will need that, please.
So I think this was actually asking about what's existing on the site. And we did provide that probably back with the original submission before COVID, but we can update the plan with the 549 that is existing.
Okay. Is that good, board? Okay. Number 20, staff recommends the board require the applicant to estimate a maximum wastewater system demand or clarify that the estimated water and wastewater demands are identical.
These are very preliminary numbers, but they would be identical at this time.
Thank you. Number 21, staff recommends the board include a condition of approval in this decision that stormwater treatment be evaluated on a phase-by-phase basis.
We're okay with that.
Okay. 22, this is about stormwater treatment and the analysis, is it sufficient?
So I think this is maybe coming from maybe not completely realizing that sort of that block up front is already part of an existing stormwater permit. Buildings 1, 2, 3, 7, and portions of 6 are actually already on a stormwater permit. They go to that pond, and it's 90% development of that area. So that's why there's not a whole lot of little blue shapes shown in that area, but we do feel that the shapes we have shown on the plan is sufficient.
Are you going to be able to retrofit that pond to meet the current standards, stormwater standards?
I don't believe we have to because it's up to date.
It is. The pond is currently meeting the current stormwater standards.
It's got a 90/50.
Okay. Because this, from a city perspective, is considered redevelopment, so it would have to fully meet our standards. But so if you're saying it does, then that's fine.
Yeah, it fully meets the state standards, which are consistent with the city.
Okay.
Mostly.
Number 23, this is regarding park space and is it adequate? Staff recommends that the board and applicant discuss which, if any, of the features included in this illustrative concept should be required to be included in the application to construct the park.
Yeah, and I think we would just prefer to discuss this at site plan when we've have more information about, required landscape budget and things like that, because that might impact what we include in terms of.
Okay. Does that work for us?
amenities
I'm fine with that because it's pretty much giving us another bite at the apple. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay, good.
Sorry, can I just ask a question? What phase is this park proposed in?
It's split between phase 1 and phase 2.
Okay, so it's not like they're going to paint themselves into a corner and say,
Right.
we're not going to be able to do a park.
Right.
Okay. Because we've been there on other projects.
Okay, number 24, this is the dimensions of the blocks. But you're saying there are no blocks, correct?
Well, I think staff is saying that there are blocks.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we said that, I think both of us did calcs and they meet the dimensions.
I didn't hear the last part.
I think both Marty and our office did calculations in retrospect, and they meet the criteria
Okay.
dimensionally.
Okay. Number 25, this is in regard to, pardon me, minimum lot size waiver. If the applicant elects to request such a waiver, to what size should the minimum lot size be reduced?
So,
Maybe changed.
yep. So
Pardon?
this changes now with my realization on the first part.
We can put a pin in it for now, and if we're going to continue this
Okay.
here, we can come back. I mean, I don't
Because
want to
we
make you
have
say a number.
to supply you with the conceptual subdivision anyways, so I'll have a better idea of the exact number at
Great.
that point.
If that works.
Number 26. Staff recommends the board and applicant discuss reasonable limitations to building heights as informed by the preceding paragraphs.
Yeah, so I think for the townhomes, we were thinking about giving ourselves a range of maybe 22 to 44 feet. And then for all other buildings, we were thinking 44 to 76 feet. And I think 76 is the maximum allowed.
What is the current height of the building that's out there? One.
It's 4 stories. You got a tower part.
You have some vertical elements on it. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. I don't know.
We can look into that.
Yeah.
I'd just be
Okay.
curious to see, you know,
Yeah.
if you're asking for up to 76 feet, how much higher would that be than that one to see, you know?
And what is the setback from public roads of of buildings that would be as high as 76 feet? Are you going to, I would want to delimit that in some way. Is there enough coherence in the plan to be able to answer the question yet?
Well, we had asked for 10 feet along Shelburne and Fayette, but then we were asking for 1 foot on Real Road. And, you know, we don't intend to cover that entire road, as you can see, like right up to that 1 foot setback. But
So you intend the buildings on Real Road to be 70 feet high? You know?
Not necessarily.
up to that amount.
As much as 70 feet
Yeah.
high. How high is the building on the corner of Fayette Drive?
That's what we
That's-
said. We're gonna check and bring it next time, so we have it.
I'm sorry, I just
I would
didn't hear.
speculate it's like in the mid 50s, though.
That's what I'm guessing.
Well, it's
I guess I would want it. I don't know, Mark. I'll take instruction. You know, I would kind of want the height limited by the corner building.
Potentially, but I mean, I guess if you're asking for, you know, if the zoning district's what, up to 5 stories?
Yeah, 5 stories, a hypothetical maximum of 76 feet.
Okay. You know, and if the building on the corner, it's 4 stories, but that vertical element is basically a 5th story.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I'm just not, and so there's no concerns. It's more just curious, how would 76 feet potentially fit within that development, and where would you be proposing it? How would it, so, because the scale that you've established, and that's kind of the basis of everything I'm reviewing, has a really nice feel to it.
Yeah.
And my only concern is to approve up to a certain height if it's going to change the feel of the development compared to what's already been sort of, we have a built element out there to go with, which gives me confidence to approve some of these waivers and lot coverages and things like that. So I'm a little concerned about approving something that's much higher than what's out there. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think from our end, we haven't hired an architect yet, so we don't want to like get too
Right.
too narrowed down. But
Yeah.
we can, when we come back, we can bring the height of that
Okay.
existing building, and
Yep.
if we want to address this, then
Can I make a comment from here?
Of course.
Sure.
I think our interest was to make sure we had the ability to use height where we thought and where this board thought was
Yeah.
appropriate, and we'd love to protect that opportunity to show that and maybe you know, dialogue around it. But I don't think our intent is to put 76 feet on
Build 3 76-foot tall
No.
buildings. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
design idea.
Right.
But so maybe there's a way we can do it in certain areas.
Right.
But
Okay.
we want to show that.
I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. I just need more information.
yeah.
I think staff, just for what it's worth, was kind of coming at it from the opposite side as well. Like if for whatever reason market conditions changed and big box stores were back, we would be a little bit bummed if we did all this work to permit this and you went one story on everything. So we were kind of wondering if maybe there's a floor as well that is sort of necessitated due to the level of investment. And
that's what's meant by the lower numbers.
you said 44 to 76.
44 would
Yeah,
be the minimum.
cool. Yeah,
Okay.
just wanted to flag that.
Pardon me. We're almost at time. Let's do one more question. Number 27, this relates to parking spaces and the lack of a turnaround.
So we are showing, or we have striped out a spot for a turnaround right at the end of Slip Road before you would have to exit out onto Shelburne Road. It is not a turnaround that would facilitate a truck or a fire truck or something like that, but I do not believe that was the intent of the question. The intent of the question, I believe, was if somebody drives down there looking for a parking spot, they would have enough space with a normal car to turn back around and look somewhere else.
You're talking about just that little like 10,
Yeah.
20 by 20.
Because that's an
cross-hatched
exit
area.
only. So I think the worry was if somebody drives down there looking for a spot, they wouldn't have a place to kind of make a quick turnaround and come back. But we do have a little one there for your average car.
Yeah, it's not a requirement of the LDRs. I just was reviewing the plans and I was like, I wonder if they've thought about this, but I just missed it in the plans, so that's my bad.
And we couldn't put a sign there. And
No,
stuff
I mean,
like
you're fine.
that.
I just didn't see it.
Okay.
Sorry, that I did want to add to that the new park alignment also helps out with sort of a hammerhead. And our intent is to eventually make that compliant with town regulations.
Okay. I think that's where we have to end it tonight. Pardon me. We will ask for public comment and then, pardon me, set a date for you to come back. So let's take a pause and I'll ask if there are any, pardon me, members of the public who would like to provide comments. Any online?
Not seeing any this time.
Okay. Do we have a date?
Normally we talk about this in advance and we kind of didn't today. Just a moment.
Sure.
What's up?
Oh, plus.
Bear with us, please.
Marla just said that we have availability at the next meeting, so that'd be the first February or the 1st March, but 2nd February is taken. So 1st February would require that some like updated materials and research is into us like in a week, and then you'd be heard in 2 weeks from tonight, or I guess a week and 6 days.
Well, it'd be
Oh.
3. It's a 5 days.
That's right. Yeah, the first meeting of February.
So
Or
just
the
to be
first March.
clear, those items were the conceptual subdivision plan and then the updated plan for 3 and the updated plan with the steep slopes and then a height on the existing Larkin building.
That's what I have in my notes. Yeah.
The block calculations too, right? You talked about them being blocks. You did calculations for that, but they're not included in the.
Oh, true. Yeah. Yeah. The block size calculations.
Oh,
Yeah, which we both did, but are not reflected in the staff report.
And then keep in mind some things can be conditions of approval too, like the showing the steep slopes and corrections to tables and things can be conditions. They don't have to be, if everybody feels good about them, they don't have to be shown before closing.
So our next meeting is the 7th of February.
6th of February.
6th. I'm so used to Wednesdays.
I know.
The 6th of February, and you can do that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I would entertain a motion to continue this hearing for, let me find it,
I'll make
MP 2301.
I make a motion. We continue master plan application MP 2301 of John Larkin Inc. to February 6th.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nope. Thank you. We'll
Thank
see you
you.
back here in a few weeks. I am recused from the next.
All right. Moving on to number 6. Those who are here for the Habitat for Humanity project, you can come to the front where the microphones are. And our normal chair, Dawn, is recused. She's on the board of Habitat, so I'll be taking over.
Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome. So I'll just start by reading the project description we have here. Variance application VR2401 of Green Mountain Habitat for Humanity for approval to modify the dimensional standards applicable to an existing residential building lot. The modification consists of the minimum that will afford relief from the unique conditions that preclude development in strict conformity with the land development regulations, 58 Wright Court. And are you going to be the only one speaking on behalf of this application tonight?
Yes,
Okay. Could you state your name
sure. Robin Pierce.
and raise your hand? I'll swear you in. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So to start, I think you were in the audience, so you saw a little bit how this worked. We have the staff report. There's some items that we want to chat through. And I just gave a brief overview of the application, but did you want to start with a little introduction? We can bring up the initial site plan as well, kind of showing the variance that's being requested if that's helpful.
I'll give you a little bit of background. I'm sure everybody's familiar with Green Mountain Habitat for Humanity. We provide affordable homeownership housing. The people who work for this generally do 400 hours of volunteer time. We sell the houses at our cost. We're not developers. We consider ourselves to be not just house builders, but community builders. We take people out of rental housing, the vagaries of rental housing, where every year the rent can go up, and give people stability. And that's what we're looking to do in a state, in a county that's crying out for affordable housing. This is one way to do it. And the reason I'm on the other side of the fence for the first time. I was community development director in Essex Junction for 14 years. So this feels a bit different, I've got to say. But what we're trying to do is bring good people into good communities and have them integrate into the communities. And this is our first attempt. We're very happy when the land was purchased. It seemed like we don't have a single family home, and it was more expensive than we'd normally pay for a piece of land for a single family home. But with Act 47, we can now have a duplex. So that's what we're hoping to do, although each of our units can't be more than 1,300 square feet. So we're not building big houses. And this duplex will have the scale of most of the other properties along the road in on the site and feed fairly well into the urban landscape.
Excellent. Thank you for that overview. And we can dive into the comments. The first one, staff recommend the board discuss this criterion with the applicant to assess whether there exists a unique physical circumstance or condition that both A, is peculiar to this particular property, and B, creates an unnecessary hardship beyond those hardships created by the LDRs as they apply to this property. So I will just start the discussion by saying I think this meets that criteria as far as the shape of the lot, the orientation of the other homes in the neighborhood around it. Other thoughts from the board?
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah. I can agree.
Excellent. We'll move on to number 2. Staff recommends the board discuss this criterion with the applicant to assess whether there is a possibility that the property can be developed in strict conformity with the LDRs. And so specifically, we are looking with the LDRs would allow for a building envelope of 5 feet depth by 170 feet length. So that's without the variance, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I think similarly, we're just going through the thresholds
Yeah.
here,
So
right?
I like a little bit of, I guess, process background.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can.
No, you're fine. So I only been here a year and a half, but there hasn't been a variance done in my time, and I don't know how far back, Marla, we'd have to go to find another variance. But they're very infrequent, not common, because as you can see in this report, the standards criteria for granting a variance are very strict, very high. Like it says here, there is no possibility that the property can be developed in conformity with our bylaw. And so the idea is that a municipality's bylaws they cover pretty much every scenario, and even if homeowners don't always get what they want, that's the point, and that you're limited in reasonable ways to create, the community that we want to see. And every once in a while there's a situation in which the bylaws don't apply in a way that is reasonable. And so that's where this comes from. Like I said, it's not super common, and these aren't standards from our LDRs. These are standards from state statute. And so for that reason, we kind of stuck really to the script because, whereas Marla and I are super familiar with our own LDRs, we're not as familiar with these state standards. And so we just kind of copy and pasted them and let you know, whether, as staff, whether we thought the applicant, whether their project met these criteria, but ultimately the decision is up to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Marty. So I think also just repeat, we're looking at a high bar here as far as meeting these criteria. Sorry, Frank, did you have something?
I was just wondering, what does the lot meet the statutory minimum lot size?
It's an interesting question. Under the LDRs today, no. However, the lot is pre-existing, and so therefore it's developable, even though it doesn't meet the minimum lot size. And also, with Act 47 requiring a minimum of 5 units an acre, our minimum lot size is too high anyway to be compliant with the new state Act 47. So our minimum lot size would be superseded anyway to something, I think, in the high 8,000s. So this would be allowed under Act 47, but that's just a curiosity. It's a moot point because this lot has developed since prior to the time noted in the staff report, and so therefore it's developable because it is a pre-existing lot.
Any other questions before we dive back in to that? Okay. So I'm just going to repeat number 2 again. Maybe we did come to a conclusion on this, but discuss this criteria with the applicant to assess whether there's a possibility that the property can be developed in strict conformity. So without the variance, if it could be developed, I think I accept staff's kind of analysis here of, what would be possible is not a reasonable proposal.
I concur.
Okay, excellent. Number 3, staff recommends that the board discuss this criterion with the applicant. Oh, sorry, they're worded similarly. Hardship has been created by the applicant. So this is simply a requirement to say that the applicant did not create this for themselves. I think we're in agreement on that. And we will move on to the next criterion. Number 4, staff recommends that the board discuss this criterion with the applicant and assess whether the variance, if authorized, will 1, alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district in which the property is located, B, substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property, C, reduce access to renewable energy resources, or B, be detrimental to public welfare.
If I could just jump in here.
Yes, please.
So this is kind of the point of the review where things get a little bit more subjective. So the first three criteria are establishing whether or not the property is eligible for a variance. And now that we've established by your concurrence with the first 3 points that it is eligible for a variance, now the board is, it's up to the board to determine what that variance is, what it looks like. There's guidelines from the state. I mean, not guidelines, they're the criterion. And so you have to ensure that the variance meets, the letter of the law for 4 and for 5. So it has to be the minimum variance necessary to allow use of the property and a variance that won't alter the essential character of the neighborhood. So just a little bit of background, I guess in sort of giving a little bit more weight to the idea of the minimum variance necessary necessary to allow use of this property. The applicant had proposed, and staff brought it to you, just the idea of flipping or rotating and doing nothing beyond that. Just rotating the front lot line to be west, and that way the house that's built on this property would be, in a lot of ways, very similar to everything that's here already. Just because the applicant and has suggested that, and staff has sort of recommended it, doesn't mean that that's where the board needs to land. Just that's what we have in front of you. But given that you've, concurred with points 1 through 3, it seems that there does need to be a variance approved here. We just, are working through what that looks like. And like I said, the applicant has presented something.
Does anyone on the board have an alternative kind of proposal, or are we all kind of on board with the proposal that's been put forward?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'm not in opposition to the variance requests. I'm just wondering if we're granting the lot line or the setbacks to allow for a construction of a residence on this lot, why does it matter how we delineate front, rear, and sides? Is it just to minimize the size of the variance request?
Yeah, and also new residential construction, as per I think Article 317, has to be oriented to the front.
Right, but I see what you're saying.
So if we kept the front as it was, the house would still have to look in.
So because we don't have house plans, so what they're basically saying is that the proposal, the house is going to be oriented to the left.
Correct. Yeah.
Right, and that was my question too. Is have you given any thought as to what this duplex is going to look like, or if the front is going to be facing north? Then you would want to maintain that as a front lot line, and we could give you variances on the setbacks.
Yeah, I think we do because of the narrowness of the lot. If it faced the other way, how would you get vehicles onto the site? What would that do? And also, I don't think we'd want to build a house that is looking straight at the neighbor. The front door looked at the neighbor. I think we'd want to look out just as the contiguous properties do to the west.
Okay.
It's the best way I can work out to make use of the site. I know it's an anachronistic site, but it's a 1967 approval, so
yeah,
right.
That's what happens.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that worked best for you.
Yeah.
Is it going to be following sort of like the setback, like the front of your house? Is it going to kind of be in line with the front of the adjacent house?
I don't think we can move back that far with 20% lot coverage.
Okay.
We're good neighbors. We'll make it as far back as we can and still build the house.
Okay.
That's what we've proposed to. I met with someone today and yesterday from the neighborhood, and I made that promise to them, and we keep our promises.
Okay.
I think, part of that is, like Robin's saying, there is a 20% building coverage in this zoning district and then 40% total lot coverage. And technically they're already somewhat restricted in their total lot coverage by the amount of road that's on the property. Technically the variance is supposed to be the minimum waiver necessary to allow construction on the lot, and allowing an increase in lot coverage, maybe you could argue that's above the minimum necessary. However, that may also generate an outcome that's, preferable to both the developer and maybe to neighbors as well, if the house is able to be set further back on the lot, I don't know. But that's just something maybe to.
Yeah, so reorienting it allows them to meet their front and rear setbacks, and then they would still need additional setback waiver for the sides as well.
No. They can go to 5 feet as per the LDRs today. Yeah. On the sides.
Yeah, we oriented the building envelope to meet today's code requirements. Exactly.
Martin, did I understand you correctly? You're saying that with a waiver on lot coverage, they could put the face of the building in line with the face of the other houses? That's the
No, I'm sorry.
physically there wouldn't be enough room
There's
out the
not,
back of
and
the
you'd
lot.
be elongating the driveway, and that would up the lot coverage, and it would get. And we don't know, the size of the building yet. So that could, have hurdles down the road that we can't anticipate at the moment. But we'll place it in the best position we can. Absolutely. To meet and also meet the regulations.
Yeah, so I think the point is without the lot size or the lot coverage waiver, they would be maybe restricted to keeping a shorter driveway to eliminate extra lot coverage.
Right. And I guess what I'm thinking, if it's a relatively small increase in lot coverage, I'd be inclined to grant them that waiver to let them put the house more in line with the rest of the, kind of keep that setback. But that's just me.
Do we have to decide that level of detail now as part of the?
No, this is just the hearing. The hearing is where you intake information from the applicant and from members of the public who are here, and then you close the hearing if you feel that you have enough information, and then make a decision. The decision does not have to be made tonight.
What I'm saying is, does the specific application require determination of setbacks at this time? Or, we don't have a building plan yet, right? We don't have a house.
Right, but you're not going to get one because it's just they're asking for a waiver of the. You don't review single-family homes and duplexes.
Okay.
So.
But you do, right?
I do, yeah, right.
So you'll make the determinations at that time. We don't have to do that now, do we?
But administratively, we don't have the authority to grant a lot coverage waiver.
Yeah, we can't waive stuff.
To come back, right?
All right.
So if we wanted to include a lot coverage waiver as part of this variance approval, we can write that into the decision. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and staff can't do that on their own.
Yes.
And also you could, I guess, only do that if you as a board felt that was in line with state statute requiring that you only allow the minimum variance necessary, right?
Okay. Do we think we have enough information to decide that in deliberation as far as if we feel the minimum necessary would just be the change in orientation, or if we would want to consider a change in lot coverage?
Well, let's ask the applicant. Do you feel you need, like additional, lot coverage, building coverage to make this building, in line with the rest of the neighborhood?
I mean,
are we talking about more than what the applicant is asking for?
Yeah. Number one. Number two, just looking at the aerial view, to pull it back would make the front of the building about 44% back from the front property line. I'd rather just get approval of the variance proposal, and if we can work something out that needs to come back to the board and say, look, we're doing this for really good reasons. We talked about it. We didn't know that we could make the standards, but we've worked through it with the architect and we can make the standards.
Then I think I have enough information.
Okay. Anyone else on this point?
They're not asking for it. I don't think we should offer it. So,
yeah, it's the minimum.
Right. Let them come back and ask if they feel they need it.
Okay. I'm gonna go back to number 4. I feel like this is kind of like 4 questions in one since we have 4 criteria listed here. So, assess whether the variance will alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district. I think we asked some good questions about that. No concerns there. Substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property. I don't have concerns about, okay, or there. And the third one is a question I'm not really sure how to analyze, so maybe staff or board have thoughts about that. Reduce access to renewable energy resources.
Do you know what height building you're looking at putting in?
It would be a 2-story building. So.
And the one next to it looks 2-story by the picture, so
Yeah.
it should
Okay.
be a problem. If they were going to put a 4-story building in next to it, it would shade it out.
Yep. Is that the extent of kind of renewable? That was the only thing that came to mind as for me, as well as solar.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, these are state regs. And I'm not 100% certain. I do know there's a whole separate variance process for renewable energy generation features, and so I wonder if maybe this is just a nod to that.
Yes. Okay. Good point. All right. So no concerns there, and then or be detrimental to public welfare. No concerns there. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of
In
course.
front of the lot, there's already road access.
Yes.
Is that going to be continued, or are you looking? I mean, how is that supposed to be there? Is that connection supposed to be occurring?
From a staff perspective, this is super weird. I don't know why. Like we wouldn't even have to do a variance if the front lot line for this one were just in line with the one to its north. This would just be standard. Wright Court extension, to the best of my knowledge, is a private road. Wright Court, the other way is public. To the best of my knowledge, Wright Court extension, that chunk there is private. And then even though it's paved and that access has been taken, given, used for a long time, probably longer than the 15. Okay. I don't know why it's like that, but it is functionally like a throughway right now. I don't know if it's allowed to be used or what, but
I guess that would be a good question. If it's currently used as a private road, but it's essentially it's operating as kind of like a public pass-through, is this property going to be granting an easement for the continued use of it?
I don't know.
Okay. You know,
it's something we thought about. I mean, when we, again, being good neighbors, when we work out, I mean, our priority number one is the 2 affordable homes.
Right.
If we can get that and make it work, then we'll make it work.
I guess my question is, by granting this and allowing the development, are we going to be potentially cutting off what has been historically an access, even if it's private and not a public road?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I looked, you can see up there, there's a head-on car against the garages. Mm-hmm. It's not striped, so I'm assuming that they're not official parking spaces.
Right.
So, I mean, I've driven it. There's a couple little red marks in the ground before it snowed.
Yeah.
So I drove through to see if I could get through. Mm-hmm. And you do drive a little bit on the grass, just where it terminates below the word row.
Right.
And there's also a sign up there that says emergency vehicles only when you're going north. Mm-hmm. You can get through. It's, you know, you have to slow down. I'm not sure that's a bad thing in a residential neighborhood. But if we'll accommodate as much of that as a unofficial pass through.
Yeah. Oh, this isn't been surveyed, right? This is from the state website or from the.
Correct. This is just from our town parcel viewer. That's why the green line doesn't match up with the front lot line there, is because the deed has this as like a square lot, and our parcel viewer, for one, doesn't even separate the house to the north from this lot, and it has a weird angle there. So you're right that this is.
It might be shifted.
Right.
Everything is shifted. So it doesn't.
Right. This isn't a survey.
So access to this lot is going to be from Wright Court Extension?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Everything I've looked at tells me that Wright Court Extension stops at the property line.
At the property line.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Anything else? And number 5, the last criteria is that the variance represents the minimum variance that will afford relief and represents the least deviation possible from the LDRs. I think we're good on that. We have enough. Excellent. So that was all the comments. Do you have any?
No, I'd actually
final?
like to thank staff, because they've been great at moving us through the process, and we really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you. And I will just check to see if there are any public comments on this one.
Yes, can I use this microphone?
Yes. And there's a little push, and just make sure it turns bright green.
Got it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for allowing us to have public comments. I'm Zach Smith. I'm the homeowner of 46 Wright Court, which is the neighboring property to the north there. And likewise, I'd like to thank Marty for just being helpful and getting us information in prepping for this. So I'll just say up front, I'm in support of Habitat for Humanity. I think it's a great organization. And honestly, it's my opinion that this lot is just not practically sized for a single family home and much less a duplex, in my opinion. And so I'm not against Habitat for Humanity as an organization. I am against this variance because I think the fitting of a single family home or duplex in a 50-foot lot is really squeezing it. And the point of my comments that I want to try and focus today is on number 4 there, specifically the part of A where it says, will it alter the essential character of the neighborhood? And D, where it references the welfare of our neighborhood. So I did a little bit of digging on, like, why did this lot come about? Why is there a 50-foot lot that's just kind of squeezed amongst other lots? And it looks like when it was sold to the Dumont brothers, who are developers in 1966, there was a provision that when the Dumont brothers transfer the deed, they have to give the opportunity to Richard Gracie, which is the former owner of my home at 46 Wright Court, the opportunity to buy an 80-foot lot next to his home. And it appears as if that was an opportunity to provide a little bit of a buffer zone from the apartment complex that the Dumont brothers built on that lot. For whatever reason, he didn't buy an 80-foot lot, he bought a 50-foot lot. So it appears as if he just bought it as a privacy easement on the south side there of 46 Wright Court, and that is the purpose it has served for the last 60 years, since it was transferred to Richard Gracie in 1967. 55 years, I guess. So in light of that, I just bring that up to kind of talk to the character of the neighborhood, in that it appears as if the lot was originally sold not with the purpose of building on that lot, but rather providing a privacy buffer to the apartment complex that is next to 46 Wright Court and Wright Court Extension there. So a couple comments on the essential character of the neighborhood. In point 4 there, Marty laid out basically that my home and our neighboring home, we're allowed to have 5-foot setbacks. In reality, we have a 15-foot setback towards the 58 Wright Court property. So we have 15 feet, and then they would be allowed to have a 5-foot setback in addition to that. So I bring that up because the average setback in our neighborhood is 17.5 feet, which allows 35 feet between houses. And so some of those are narrower than that, but many of them are wider than that. And if this variance was allowed, then there would be basically a 5-foot setback from the Habitat property against our property line, and a total of 20 feet between our principal structure and the Habitat structure, as they're allowed to build it there. So in the sense that the average setback in the neighborhood is 17.5 feet, and this variance would allow them to have a 5-foot side lot line setback, I think it does alter the essential character of the neighborhood in the density of the neighborhood as it is established now. Additionally, if we look at the uniformity of the houses, my house, 46 Wright Court, has a greater than 50-foot setback from Wright Court Extension, and then our neighbor has a 40-foot setback from Wright Court Extension there. And then if the variance was granted here, the front lot line extends into that paved portion that was shown on the screen there. And with a 30-foot step back, which is allowed by the LDR, that would basically allow Habitat to build all the way up to the paved portion. And then that would be 40 feet in front of like the average front line of the houses on my side of the street there. So in that sense, a building that's 40 feet out in front is visible to the other buildings on my side of the street, but also is not in the essential character of the neighborhood as it stands now, in my opinion. Lastly, I'll talk to point D of note 4 there, detrimental to public welfare. The passageway there has been used ever since I've lived there, and ever since Mr. Russell, the neighboring property owner, has owned the property for the last 30 years. Ever since he's owned the property, it's been used by emergency vehicles, snow plows, utility trucks, USPS, UPS, FedEx. There's all sorts of traffic that goes through there. And so I looked into some of the deeds, and I think it's clear that there is included a right-of-way. It says, in common with others over and through Wright Court. This was included in the deed that was transferred to the Dumont brothers that included the clause that basically that this lot be subdivided. And then the deed itself for 58 Wright Court does not contain any verbiage about a right-of-way. However, it does reference the previous deed, which was transferred to both Mr. Gracie and the Dumont brothers as including a right-of-way. So for that purpose, I would say that there is a right-of-way there, and then that would basically eat about 30 feet of the lot thereof, because it's my understanding the setback couldn't start until the right-of-way. So if there's not a right-of-way, then basically Habitat would be able to build all the way up to the asphalt. If there is a right-of-way, that's my understanding that the setback would have to be another 30 feet back from that, which would further reduce the lot size to less than the minimum lot size in our district.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at me. Just to jump in, I think there's a difference between right-of-way and easement. I don't know what the verbiage in that deed is, but if it's an easement, then the right-of-way would still be like the property line would be the property line. But if it is like a true right-of-way, then the property line would start there. So there's like a slight technical difference.
Yep, I have copies of all the deeds if you'd like to look at the verbiage.
No, just you were just looking at me to jump in, so I just jumped in.
Got it. I just looked at you regarding the minimum lot size, because you mentioned Article 47. I don't know what they've established it to, but if you establish that there is a right-of-way there, that would reduce the lot size to about 7,500 square feet, which is, I believe, less than the proposed new.
Well, that would depend on whether the right-of-way reduces the lot size, which it doesn't.
Well, it's whether it's a right-of-way or if it's an easement.
It doesn't reduce the lot size in either event.
I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt, but are we clear that's where the property line is? Because on you do go online to the viewer, right?
So yeah, we've
It's
looked
not
in the
there.
land records at the deeds, and the deeds specify the property dimensions.
It specified what? I'm sorry.
The property dimensions, as Marty has shown them, in the blue and red, rather than the.
I think probably what you have as well. It's like 180 by 50.
Mm-hmm. Right, and what I'm referencing for lot sizes in the LDR, it says that it's the lot dimensions apart from any right-of-ways that exist amongst those lot dimensions. So I think it's in the definition of lot area. It is the size of the lot exempting any right-of-ways on that lot.
Is that right?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's not our duty right now. It's not your duty right now to do that. If we receive a zoning permit application on a lot that's too small to develop, we would deny that application. But right now, the application is the task before you is just you're not title searchers. You're just processing a variance request.
If I could just summarize, I think it does alter the essential character of the neighborhood by allowing a setback that's significantly less than the average in the neighborhood that's established already. I think the ability for Habitat to build significantly forward of the other houses on Wright Court Extension there also alters the essential character of the neighborhood, and then detrimental to public welfare. I think most of the homeowners on Wright Court and Wright Court Extension would agree that like most trucks have to go through there. It's really tight to get down the single lane of Wright Court itself. And when I've seen, utility trucks or emergency vehicles go down our road, they always go through the Wright Court Extension right of way there because it's impractical really to use Wright Court itself. And if there is a truck parked there, it's impossible for us to get out unless there is a right of way there.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other public comments? Yep, go ahead. And if the bright light isn't still on the microphone, just click the push and it should glow. And state your name for us.
Hi, my name is Amy Truchon. I live at 34 Wright Court. Our house faces south, down across Wright Court and onto Wright Court Extension and the existing right-of-way. I'd like to echo some of the comments of Zach and also publicly state my objection to the variance application. And as Zach did, also to thank you all for letting us participate in this process. We have close to 60% of our property owners from Wright Court that are represented here tonight, either in person or online. And I have some questions too that were starting to surface in the discussion. And some of those are related to the dimensions of the lot because there do seem to be some inconsistencies with what is in this packet. In terms of the way the lot is in the site plan is presented as a rectangular lot, but then when you look at the parcel viewer, and I can see some of those lines here in the diagonal line, and then looking at the deed for the lot, it does show that it is not a truly rectangular lot. And so I have questions about what the actual dimensions and the square footage, what these inconsistencies mean for the proposed, site plan that's contained in here, how it impacts the right-of-way and the setbacks of this lot. And I think those things then greatly impact the items that are referenced in the state statutes, specifically in Section 4, that state the variance if authorized would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district in which the property is located, substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property, reduce access to renewable energy resources, or be detrimental to the public welfare. And I'd like to suggest that if the variance is granted and the west lot line becomes the front lot line, there are implications for resident safety, public welfare, impairment to the appropriate use of the adjacent property, which is 300 Hinesburg Road. And the site plan would, in fact, alter the essential character of the Wright Court neighborhood in the northwest quadrant of South Burlington. Reorienting the lot line and subsequent development as described in the application and depicted in the site plan would have implications for access to the street and right-of-way. It is our concern that if the road is discontinued, which is that, extension, because the front lot line would then be sitting, in that space, emergency vehicles would not be able to gain the necessary access or have the appropriate ability to turn around or exit 300 Hinesburg Road or Wright Court, which is now currently possible. We witness the challenges that large utility vehicles, emergency vehicles, and waste removal trucks encounter almost daily on the street, which causes them to drive on our median, removing branches from our trees on a regular basis, and this is not in emergency situations. Pedestrian safety. The east side of Route 116, which I realize is a state road, does not have sidewalks, nor does Wright Court. And there are no crosswalks to assist in crossing Route 116 to gain access to other South Burlington streets and eventually resources like the bike path from Wright Court. For this reason, I and others use the Wright Court extension and right-of-way on an almost daily basis to create a safe route to other neighborhoods and portions of our city. What I originally considered to be a luxury has become a necessity in recent years to avoid having to walk on the shoulder of 116 to get the nearest neighborhoods on the east side of Hinesburg Road, essentially Prouty Parkway and Mayfair Park, and the nearest crosswalk, which is also across from the mouth of Prouty Parkway, to get to sidewalks for recreation, walking, and biking to school, etc. Our neighborhood does not receive high scores for being a pedestrian neighborhood, and allowing for this variance would further impede this. Impairment to the appropriate use of the adjacent property, 300 Hinesburg Road. If lot orientation is adjusted, 300 Hinesburg Road would not be able to maintain appropriate use of its buildings and facilities, namely the maintenance garage office that is a part of an existing structure and sits due west of the proposed front lot line. Like within, maybe in some of the pictures you can see, there's that car that's parked there. So you've essentially, from the aerial view, it looks like a car and change. Let's see. alter the essential character of the Wright Court neighborhood in the northwest quadrant of South Burlington. In a short period of time, I familiarized myself with an array of definitions related to this application. Although the word character or characterize is used throughout the newly amended LDRs and the Vermont state statutes, nowhere is it defined. By reading named neighborhood descriptions or regulations for proposed large-scale developments, it can be ascertained that essential character is defined by a conglomerate of considerations like architectural features, orientation to the street, access to the street, green space, recreational amenities, and historical significance. Wright Court is unique with its tree-lined median and border to the north and east of Resurrection Park. Many who live in South Burlington have never frequented the street. It is quiet. There's not high turnover on Wright Court. It was originally agrarian land and maybe one of the oldest streets in South Burlington. It is part of the northwest quadrant, which is referred to as a historical portion of the city. The approval of the variance would afford development of a site plan that would allow for architectural and situational anomalies relative to the other 10 structures on the street. Two-story duplex, lot location, lack of street front, lack of access by pedestrians that would not be in keeping with the essential character of this neighborhood. And one last question. The application refers to Wright Court and this lot being in a habitat overlay district. And I'm wondering if you could say more about that.
Yeah, if that's appropriate. Yeah, so there's a habitat block.
Sorry, could you just repeat the end of your question? We couldn't.
Yeah, the application shows that Wright Court is part of the habitat overlay district or block. Maybe it's a block. And so I'm curious about what that means for Wright Court and the positioning of this lot, because on some of the maps, it appears that land very close to this lot, which has recently been completely cleared, are quite close to habitat overlay.
Yeah, so the habitat block overlay, there's also a habitat corridor overlay, and they kind of identify like the forested or otherwise naturally significant areas in South Burlington. They have heightened levels of protection from development, but those protections don't apply to habitat block that is on lots of less than 1 acre. So it's just noted as like a formality in the application because there is habitat block overlay that spills onto this lot, but the regulations specifically exempt lots of less than 1 acre from having to comply with the standards of the habitat block overlay.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. I gather, well, let me just ask the question. If the variance were conditioned such that the current width and access for the right-of-way were preserved, then that concern would be eliminated, right?
Some of that concern could be eliminated, but it
Thank
then impacts, where then the right-of-way is there, how does that then impact the rest of the setbacks for the street that then begs some other questions about the positioning of the home and how it is or doesn't line up.
What does the positioning of the home have to do with the essential character of the neighborhood or the public welfare?
Essential character would be similar to what Zach was mentioning, how the placement of the home would not be in alignment with the other homes on the street or positioned such that it is kept.
Okay, so that's essential welfare as to the placement of the home, but public welfare wouldn't be touched at all regarding the replacement of the home, would it?
No, the public welfare
Thank you.
would not. No, sorry, essential character.
Can I what's something you've touched upon? Can I just ask the applicant a question? Do you have you're saying you don't have any proposed architectural plans or anything like that, but you've clearly built a duplex. What do you envision the depth of the duplex being?
Probably no more than 35 feet.
So it's going to be 40 by 35. It's going to be the box, the footprint.
Max.
Okay. So, this goes to the question I raised earlier when I said, is there a right of way? Is the pass through, because the way the lot is, it looks like it terminates. And if you look on anything, you look on, Google Earth, Google Maps, the street view, that road, that the Wright Court extension seems to be a pretty well established pass through, whether it's a legal pass through or it's an established pass through. And the one concern I have, and one thing that I would want to condition on this, is that that is maintained. And that if you have a 135-foot deep building envelope, you could certainly locate the building envelope of a 35-foot deep by 40-foot wide footprint such that it would not impact that pass through, and maintain it and still have enough of a front yard setback such that maybe you're not in line with 46 Wright Court, but you're certainly not pushing up against the edge of the existing pavement.
Yeah.
And any support of mine would be conditioned upon the building envelope not floating within that 135-foot deep envelope, but more constrained to a location that it does fit within the pattern of the existing neighborhood.
I don't think we have any problems with that. I'm looking actually at the second house north of our lot, and it's certainly, if that line is consistent, it's certainly, if the one just north of us is 30 feet from the road, then that one's 12 feet from the road. So there's not a consistency.
Right. I hear the neighbors' concerns. I think your concerns where there's not control over where the house gets placed is valid. And I agree that it would, if we don't put some controls on the location of the building envelope within that 40 by 135 foot, we very easily could impact the essential neighborhood characteristics. I tend to disagree that just putting anything here would affect the overall neighborhood, characteristics, because I think there's, you can talk about average, you can talk about what's there and this and that. I think that it's you've got a mix of houses. You've got some larger houses with deeper setbacks. You have some denser, the apartment building. You've got a garage. So my concerns and my controls over my conditioning of an approval or variance would be such the location of the house minimizes the impact of what a pre-existing conditions already out there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
My only concern is the one I expressed, which is that you need to preserve, as far as I'm concerned, you need to conserve the pass-through.
That's mine too.
Where it goes, I have less concern than Mark does about the placement of the building.
Well, no, my placement of the building.
Well, it would affect that.
Yes, my placement of the
except to
building
the extent it affects that. Obviously, you can't intrude upon the pass-through.
That's exactly where I was saying.
But I think you should, so you understand where I'm at least.
Absolutely.
I think you should preserve the pass-through as it is.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've had a few conversations with Jack Russell, as Zach mentioned, and it wouldn't be our intention to stop people driving through there. My only concern is that we retain enough property to build a house that also complies with your regulations.
Yeah, I think that with the depth of the lot we're potentially talking about, and your, statement that it's about 35 foot deep, you've got more than enough room that we can accomplish both.
Well, I do have one more question about that. Pertinent to that, how about the topography of the lot? Is there anything about the topography that limits where the location of the house can be?
No, it's almost completely flat.
Okay. Well, it ought to be manageable then.
Yeah.
Did have one question. Who currently maintains that Wright Court extension? I guess this is one more for the folks testifying. Potholes, or is it just a dirt track? And
the city plows the Wright Court extension to a certain spot, and then the owners of 300 Hinesburg Road approach it from their property, and they plow all of their property line.
Thank
you. Anything else right now, board? Okay, do we have more public comment on this? Any online?
I have just a quick comment.
So if you're going to make a comment, you do have to come up to microphone and just state your name, please. Yeah, so there's a push button and
Okay,
it
how
should
about
turn
that?
bright. Yep.
Is that better?
Good.
Who's it?
Robin.
Yep. Could you, sorry,
Yes, my
just state
name's
your name.
Nate Ely, 40 Wright Court.
Thank you.
There are, you mentioned at one point that the parking spaces there are not delineated. There are painted lines there. Those are parking spaces. And one observation that I have is my understanding is that Habitat builds houses and somebody lives there. So Habitat doesn't maintain control of the property.
Somebody owns the property. It's sold to someone.
Correct. So you may not have an intention to impede that right of way or not allow the continuing use of that right of way. But whoever buys that property might say, well, actually, we don't want people using this coming by our house.
Well, not if the variance stated it had
so
to be.
unless the variance does specify that that right of way is not impeded by future owners,
My personal
then
opinion is
then
that
that
would be
would
something
right.
I'd
And
feel
I
very-
agree with you about bringing the house back further so it does stay in line with the other houses in the neighborhood, versus allowing it to be then almost creating a dead end situation. If that right of way isn't maintained, that road isn't maintained where the building envelope comes, the building envelope
well,
would basically end at the pavement, like Zach mentioned. That would almost create a visual dead end instead of, a circular road. So that's just another.
I hear what you're saying, and whatever conditions, if we so are inclined to put on the approval, I think that goes to us in agreement that this would not alter the inherent characteristics of the existing neighborhood. So any conditions that I would be supporting and proposing would put that restrictions on the lot right in there.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just to make a point, I don't know whether Mark and I are at odds or not, and it's not going to matter. It depends what the majority of the board does. But speaking for my vote, all I'm concerned about is free passage for the right-of-way. Your concern about alignment with the other houses is not a concern of mine. I don't think it touches essential character of the neighborhood. So the setback needs to be consistent with making sure that the right-of-way stays clear, but not, from my perspective, alignment of the houses.
One thing I'll just offer is that, we've talked about how rarely we issue variances in the city. I've been on the board now a long time. And I know that some of the few variances we have issued have been on front yard setback variances for when someone wants to put either an addition, a covered porch, something like that. And we've always gone to, as long as it does not go beyond the established line of the neighborhood. So, if you're trying to put a front yard, covered porch that goes beyond the line of the, rest of the neighborhood, it's not something we typically would support. So that's one of the reasons why I said maybe it doesn't have to be directly in line because there's not like a line running down, for all the setbacks. But I think that where it's, it can't inherently change the characteristics, so it can't be right up on the pavement line kind of thing.
Okay. So, and then this is just a general question because I don't really know much about how these work. But Zach did point out that the paved portion is an easement or a right of way, and then you mentioned that was it didn't affect the lot size. So before you guys vote on this, how do you determine if that right of way has to be subtracted from the lot size or not, whether it's an easement or a right of way? If that does in fact by regulation have to be subtracted from the lot size, and then the lot size ends up being less than what you said the state minimum was, which was in the 8,000s, then does the variation application automatically get rejected? And how do you determine how you proceed before you take a vote?
I think we ought to reserve any comment on that.
For deliberations, I agree.
Okay. That's a harder question. I don't
Sure
think
is.
people
Yep,
should
sure
be
is.
speaking from the hip.
Yep. Sure is.
I
All right. Thank
appreciate
you.
the question though. So how do we have more public comment either here or online? I'm just trying to get a sense of how many other folks. If you plan to, yeah, come on up. If you plan to speak and you're in the audience currently and haven't, do you mind just raising your hand? Anyone else? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone else in the audience. Anyone else online? If you're planning to speak, can you make that known? Are we seeing anyone else? Okay, great. I just wanted to get a sense. We've heard a lot of good feedback, so I will just say if try not to be overly repetitive of anything that maybe your neighbors have noted.
Yeah.
You know, definitely say your piece, and then you can always submit written comments to us as well. But you can also reference what folks said if you're in agreement, and be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm Jody Dubuque, and I live at 27 Wright Court, which is where the pool is and the fence there. I have lived there since 1996, and plus I know myself and all our neighbors are pro Habitat for Humanity. Just want that to be noted. I have seen fires at the apartment buildings. I've seen trucks and emergency vehicles try to get, it's tough. You can't see where you have to turn around there to the one way and turn around. It's impossible for large trucks to turn around on Wright Court. They really have to use the extension. If you do preserve the extension, and then what is the setback to the from the lot line? Is it going to be enough room for a house? And to Zach's point, I do think it would look odd if the house sat 40 feet in front of his house. And I'm just concerned that this lot isn't large enough to build on. And I'm worried how, with the traffic, if you're having a duplex, you're going to have at least 2 cars, if not 4. So the traffic will increase. Yeah, and I don't think the city maintains the potholes. I don't know. They plow, but it's going to be maybe detrimental to that area too. So, yeah, I'm just more concerned about the safety and where cars will park and how many cars there will be in and out. And that's my concern.
Thank you for your comments. Oh, did anyone on the board? Okay, I think you're all set. Thank you. I think that was our last public commenter, going once, going twice. I think we have enough to close. Board? Yes? Okay.
My question is the question about the lots. I'm uncertain whether we can wait for deliberations or whether we need to get it on the record. Clarity about the lot size.
So if it's publicly available information, something that we can look up in the land records, you can add it to your bucket of knowledge before the hearing is
So
closed.
we don't have to keep the record open.
If it's testimony.
We need to determine. It was a good question the guy asked.
Yep. And if it's information like the deeds and language that's publicly available, we can. Okay. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Then
I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we close variance application VR 2401 of Green Mountain Habitat for Humanity.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstain? Okay. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. So you've closed it. How do we find out what's next?
Sure. If you signed in, you will get a copy of the decision. And the board has a state statutory requirement to issue a decision within 45 days. They usually do better than that.
Thank you.
You're fine.
Good evening.
Hi,
Welcome back.
thank you.
So while everybody's getting settled, just a little by way of introduction, this next master plan sketch plan application, I know you saw these folks just a couple weeks ago. They have decided to scale back their project, and because the layout of the scaled back project is significantly different than what they had previously proposed, we did direct them to come back for a second sketch plan application because the comments would be significantly different. If they were to modify their project in some other way that was generally consistent with what you heard tonight, we wouldn't advise them to come back again. It's just this is so dramatically different than what they had proposed.
Good evening.
Okay, good evening. Okay, our next applicant or application is Master Plan Sketch Plan Application SD 2402 of WGM Associates to subdivide an existing approximately 10-acre lot development with 3 homes into 7 single-family home lots ranging from 0.67 acres to 3.0 acres and 1.0 acre open space lot at 850 Hinesburg Road. Now, this is a sketch plan, so we don't have to swear you in.
Okay, I think it's 6 lots, isn't it?
Yeah, I think my syntax got screwy. It was 7 lots, and I should have said 6 single-family home lots and 1 open space lot. So
Oh, right,
sorry about
okay.
that. Yeah, that was my syntax, but the plans are consistent.
Are there any conflicts or recusals? No. Okay. Please introduce yourself to us again.
I'm Keith Wright, one of the Wright family members that live up on the property. And I'm sure you remember us from last time. We learned quite a bit at the last meeting. And so what we kind of changed
And
things.
who are you with? I'm sorry.
Oh, this is my wife, Nicole Wright,
Okay.
and my sister, Nancy McGovern.
Hi. Okay, thank you.
And so we learned quite a bit at the last meeting. And you were telling us that if we would have gone with all the lots, you have to 5 or 7 years to do them, or they more or less go away, right? So with discussion with us, they have no plans of doing anything in the next 10, 12 years. So that would take away putting lots on theirs. And we also learned that we can do 5-foot setbacks or side setbacks. So it changed up the lot structure that I wanted to divide up. It would put the house that's currently there on its own lot, and then the garage and the first unit would be one. And then you would have 2 more building lots down below that would be accessed by a private driveway to those 2 lots. The main road from 116 to the back of that parking lot is right around 200 feet. So that would be your private road, I believe. And then the continuation to the other 2 houses would be a private drive. And also on this map, it doesn't show it, but because of the 5-foot setbacks, when we do bring in the next drawing, the lot lines between Nancy's and Sharon's, those will be straightened up quite a bit because you don't have to have the big 35-foot setback. So that those would be straightened up quite a bit.
Okay. As you know, what our process involves going through the staff report and focusing particularly on the red highlighted comments and have you respond to those, and we will ask questions.
Sure.
So thank you for that little overview. The first comment, I think we need to affirm that this area is served by municipal water and sewer.
Yes, you did affirm that last meeting.
Right, I just want to make sure that because it's a different application.
Okay,
Right.
you wanted to get
Have
that on
we-
the
Everybody
record.
feels the same way.
Have we gotten any guidance from the committee that was working on determining what areas, wasn't planning or some other committee working on guidance on what was served and what wasn't?
The Planning Commission is still working. They've had their initial high-level conversation, and it hasn't affected the conclusion that the board came to. They're not heading in a different direction.
Okay, so moving on to number 2. This is regarding open space. Which type of open space is proposed?
So I think we had determined that it made sense to use it as a community garden. I think that was an option in your regulations as a community garden.
Okay. Questions, anyone? Thank you. Number 3, I'm going to read this. Staff recommends the board ask the applicant to describe how the proposed civic space lot, number 4, will be accessed from an abutting street and how that access will be visible, apparent, and accessible from the street. Staff considers access must be from Hinesburg Rd since the property does not enjoy any other frontage or easements.
Okay. Access to the community gardens you're talking about, correct?
Let me just. Yes,
Okay.
civic space, yes.
So my proposal would be the private drive that is going to access the 2 back lots will give a right of way to all the properties on Route 1, Building Lot 1, a right of way to the community garden. And I will extend the driveway all the way to the community garden.
Show me on here on the map where the community garden is, please.
The community garden is the back rectangle. It encompasses all 3 lots. And what I will do, you can see the driveway ended. I will continue it to the community garden and give the 3 or 4 lots, whatever there is on lot number 1, right away to use the private drive to access community gardens.
Okay. Questions, anyone?
And the idea, I guess, is that when each lot is conveyed, what would be conveyed was an interesting common with everybody else in the community garden.
Yes.
So, all right. So in other words, you're not retaining, okay, that's enough.
Right. So the driveway would be accessible by every lot there.
But I'm talking about the civic space itself. It's not really a civic space, it's a community
garden.
It's a community garden for the people in this particular development.
In the 10-acre lot, yes.
All right, I got you.
Okay, move on. Number 4, staff recommends the board discuss whether the applicant will adopt this or another solution to the problem of
Excuse me a
building
minute,
lots.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear because the
Sure.
term civic space threw me a little bit. This
Okay.
is not a civic space. Do we need a civic space here? Because if we do, the community garden is not a civic space. As I understand
It's an
it.
amenity.
As usual, you have gotten to the heart of the matter. I just started having a little anxiety about this because I think our current regulations are somewhat convoluted in this regard. And to be honest with you, I cannot recall the details of whether it has to be a civic space that's open to the general public or just a site amenity that's open to members of this community, this subdivision. So I'm gonna have to make sure we clarify that before the next formal stage of review.
Okay, do you understand the problem?
I do.
Yeah.
And I think you brought that up last time because somebody asked if they could go and have a picnic there. And it was said, no, it is for the 10 acres only.
All right, so you'll need to leave here without that question answered, at least for tonight.
Okay, that would be fine.
We don't know. Okay.
Understood.
Okay. All right, we good to move on? All right. Staff recommends the board discuss whether the applicant will adopt this or another solution to the problem of building lots fronting on streets. I don't have the diagram. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I guess you would like the front of the house facing Hinesburg Rd is what you're more or less talking about, or
So
facing
this gets to sort of the bigger question that was discussed in another comment as well about homes have to face on a street or on a civic space. And so if you go to the plan, please, that middle lot doesn't face on either because it faces on a driveway. Can you point to the middle one for me? Yeah, that one.
Well, what would happen if we turned the house so it did go to the civic space?
So it's not about it front on, I guess. I'm using the word face, but it says the word front, which means it has to be touching. I think we had corresponded a little bit about another solution that you guys had thought of. If you wanted to introduce that now, that might be the right time.
Okay. The one I sent
Yeah.
that you responded to?
Yeah.
Do you have that?
I didn't put it in the packet because I didn't.
I guess.
I think you can kind of describe it in words, right? I can pull it up quickly though if.
I guess if you look at this and aesthetically, it is on a slope there, so the houses are going to be at different levels, and you know, so even if they did, actually, the view to the east is unbelievable there. It's absolutely gorgeous. So if they did face that way, even though there might be a house on the next lot, you're pretty much going to be overlooking it, and the view to the east is just unbelievable there, especially, you know, in the morning when the sun comes up. It's absolutely beautiful. You really can't see Hinesburg Road, like I said, because of the slope. So I mean, we're open to whatever, you know, you want to do there, obviously, but as far as aesthetically, it would be very nice if they could face the east. But I mean, it doesn't have to be the front of the house because, you know, the living space or your family room is probably going to face that way anyways, so you do get the beautiful views.
Marla, what's the difference between a private street and a driveway?
So a private street has to be 20 feet wide and a driveway can be like 12 feet wide. Private street would have to have, 18 inches of gravel subbase.
I'm sorry, would have to have what?
18 inches of gravel subbase, but it's mostly about a little bit of extra width.
Can you make your driveway 20 feet wide?
So that was the one solution that was proposed.
To just clarify things a little bit, when I do put it in, of course, I was a farmer in my younger years, so I tend to overbuild everything. We will go down. There will be a riprap base. It'll have 3-inch minus and then a 1.5-inch minus covered with a dirty P over the top. The minimum width I would go will be 14 feet because I have a 10-foot snow pusher that I plow with. So obviously I can't have a very small driveway. I have
but you could go to 20 if Marla says you need a private street?
I guess if we had to, we could.
Right. So most of these staff comments are tied together. So let me introduce the bigger picture. The bigger picture is the LDRs are set up to contemplate streets going to property lines. If, and there's lots to unpack here. If the board says you don't have to go to a property line, you can have a dead end street, they have to find that it's not feasible to go to the property line, and that dead end street has to be limited to no more than 200 feet long. On the plan that's on the screen, the first purple line from Hinesburg Road is about 200 feet away from Hinesburg Road. And so in this configuration, that would be the end of the private street. The problem here is that homes on new lots have to front on a public street, or on a street, could be a private street or a public street, or on a civic space. So in this configuration, the existing home on the left fronts on Hinesburg Road. Mm-hmm. The second home, the new home, would front on that private street. The home on the far right would front on the civic space, mm-hmm. and the home in the middle doesn't front on anything. So the solution that staff proposed to both of these things, the LDRs being set up to have streets go to property lines and to lots having to front on streets, is to continue this private street down to the third home in the back and then have a future right-of-way reserved for a street at such time as the lot to the south is developed, similar to what the Wrights had proposed before. They don't actually have to do anything. They just have to they have to specifically not do anything on that land. They can't build on it. They can't, put a house on it. They'd have to reserve that land for a future right-of-way going north to south to the property line. That allows all of those lots to front on a street. It would be a private street. We would never intend to take it over. But if the lot to the south were developed and those other two lots at some future time wanted to do a big subdivision, that would be available and they could do it. I think, Nancy, you came up with another solution.
Nicole. Nancy.
Sorry.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Hi, Nancy. I can't even see you over there. I think, Nicole, you came up with another solution, which I do have up on my screen if you wanted to share right now.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So, Marty, I'm going to take over sharing the screen. Let me see. Share. Yes. Nope. I can just override you. So this was a new solution that you'd come up with. Do you want to explain what you have here?
Sure. So our I guess last sort of thought was if we adjusted the property line on lot 1 to be obviously just the house on Hinesburg Rd frontage, to allow the lot 1-2 be a larger lot with a house that would be serviced by that private street. And then there's only 2 homes serviced by, I think, the private driveway.
So where is the 200-foot line in this drawing?
The 200-foot line would be, well, the white area is,
roughly where that
the
cursor
white
is.
area is like a big parking lot, so it would be right along the edge
It's
of
up
that.
on the back. So in this configuration, how does this lot front on a street?
Well, it actually wouldn't. So I guess what we would have to do is, like you said,
Bring
continue the street
down
down
to lot.
and then agree that if they ever want to develop those other 2 lots, that it allows the street to follow the community garden property line, is what you were talking about, correct?
Right. And, I'm just trying to be a team player here. So what if the lot line for between this lot and this lot were weird shaped?
Oh, okay.
Now, our regulations do say lots should be rectangular in shape, not must be. So this is what I kind of tried to explain to you guys by email, and I've been saying to the board. This is sort of, we are finding that there are often situations where you can get to yes, but it is sort of a bunch of hurdles, and getting to yes is easier if you do the thing that is contemplated in the regulations. Extend this street to here, and then have reserved land for a future street down here. But there may be a path forward. Another path forward. It's just going to involve a lot of careful thinking and questioning. And go ahead.
Can I have a question to that? There is plans, obviously, perhaps in the future, for subdividing the remaining land. So wouldn't it make more sense to provide a right-of-way now to allow that to occur rather than having to go through
Well,
a hurdle in the
actually,
future?
my 2 sisters have no plans of doing anything.
In the beginning, you said, though, in 12 to 15
Well,
years, there might
because
be
when we first, our consultant,
Yep.
when we first came here, he goes, think down the road and anything you want to do it now. So they go, well, maybe, it was like maybe,
Okay.
It was something that maybe down the road, maybe one of the kids might want to come back from Florida, but it's in that 5 to 7 year window. So it's not going to happen in that time frame anyway. So it would kind of be null and void anyways, correct?
Like the length of a master plan is 6 years. Yeah.
Right. I was just getting at future.
Right. I understand what you're saying.
Right.
I mean, to answer it better, one, it would take a lot of money to do that. they have no plans on developing or doing that. You know, we've lived there all of our life. Our family's been there for over 100 years, and we just want to continue, you know, raising the generations there. So we have no current plans. And like you said, you know, generations down the road might change their mind. Well, then they'll have to come forward and meet whatever criteria you have for them on that. But as far as we're concerned, this is about it for us. You know, we went with the other plan, and to be honest with you, the consultant firm came back with they wanted $100,000 budget, and I'm there like, wow, you know, this has gotten way out of hand. So, you know, we're not interested in doing something like this. We just want to do a simple family thing here, you know. I don't have endless pockets, and my sisters don't either, you know. We just like to continue our family little compound that we have. That's all. It's relatively simple. And I can't speak for generations down the road, but if they do want to develop, then they'll have to come in and they'll have to meet the current criteria.
So to circle back to the staff comment here.
Would another possibility is if we go back to the plan that was in the packet, you don't have to necessarily turn the entire driveway into a road. You only have to turn the driveway in front of lot 1-2 into a road. And then 1-3's adjacent is fronting onto that. Effectively the same game you play with kicking the property line out on the other one. And then you could have the driveway continue. Now, whether you'd want to change the size of it halfway down or not, but practically you only need to extend the private road, and then we'd obviously need to give the waiver to make it deeper than 200 feet, but we're looking at that if we go all the way down to the end.
I mean, I have no problem making it 20 feet wide. I have no problem with doing that whatsoever.
Okay. Comments, questions?
I guess I would just say it's sketch. I don't think that either of these solutions necessarily would necessitate a new sketch. Would the board agree that? Okay.
Right.
All right. So you've heard some feedback. Think about what you want to do.
Okay. So we're, just so I'm clear, so we're discussing continuing the road down, making it to the regulations of what you want for a road as far as gravel base and width. And then the lot 1-3, the house could face the drive or the road, private road, whatever you want to call it. That's where we're headed, correct? Okay, that's fair enough.
Okay. Comment number 5. Staff recommends the board discuss with the applicant whether they can reduce the setbacks on the existing accessory structures to improve compliance with the requirements for generally rectangular lots. I think we've addressed that.
Yes, we did. We're going to clean that lot line up quite a bit now that we realize it's only going to be 5 feet.
And then number 6 is about modifying to create a west-east roadway, but that's what you're proposing, isn't it?
Right. We kind of smushed 6 together with 4.
Yeah, Marla asked if we could just keep a spot open along the community garden in case they ever do want to develop there.
Okay.
That would have to become a road.
Okay.
And down the road, if future generations want to do that, that's one of the hoops they're going to have to jump through.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
So
fair
staff
enough.
comment number 6 outlines sort of this third alternative, which is to go as a PUD, because PUD allows modification of standards that are not dimensional standards. I think that's going down the same road that Keith was mentioning that they were finding isn't working for them, which is making this a really complicated project for a relatively simple family subdivision. So
yeah,
we weren't really suggesting that, but it is an option.
No, I'm going to go
Things
with
go
whatever you tell me. I mean, you know what I want to do, so just guide me in the correct direction.
Okay, number 7. What street type? We've really addressed this already, I think.
Yes, we have.
Okay. Number 8. In light of the necessary roadway modification, staff assumes the applicant, pardon me, will propose a 2-phase project with the second phase to consist of connecting the roadway to the adjacent parcel to the south. Staff recommends the board discuss phasing with the applicant.
I guess we did discuss that. If they ever do want to develop, that would be the second phase, correct?
There's no plan.
There is no
for
plan.
development on those lots right now.
I think the only thing I want to make sure we do is, I know we're talking, the conceptually what the idea is to split the property into three pieces.
Correct.
Your 2 sisters maintain their 2 lots.
Correct.
And you're going to take your third and develop it to whatever potential we can, with no plans down the road to make a connection to the 2 additional lots to the south.
Correct.
I think the only thing I want to make sure we do is that anything we do on these 4 proposed lots that are along the north, that doesn't impact the 2 lots to the south, allows for that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot, that if the 2 lots to the south down the road decide to develop, we don't have any controls on those lots to the north that allow us to make those connections.
Correct. I think that's where Marla said that she wanted the right of way for the street, and that would also give you the right of way for that private drive, correct?
Yep. Yeah. So you can maintain the 2 lots to the south without any impacts, but if down the road, yes.
To be completely honest with you, I think what we're going to do is me and my sister Sharon will make that road a little extra wide. I border her lot, so the road might end up on her property a little bit too, so it can be shared by the both of us.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? It would only make sense to do that, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Let me that just triggered something. Marla, is there anything that would preclude if you hit a certain number of houses off of a private street?
No, that standard's gone the way of the dodo.
Okay, good.
With the 200-foot maximum. The idea being as many homes as you can fit on 200 feet, you can have.
Okay.
So the next comment is number 3, but it actually is number 9. And this is the question about a PUD, but we've already kind of resolved that that's too much. And that's it for the staff report. Board, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I just want to say that, as someone who drives past your property pretty much every single day, I live south in Butler Farms. I love the idea that you're going to be doing, some development, but still maintaining the character of keeping the 3 lot sort of houses and then go deeper into it.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah,
I mean, we love it. I mean, I've never lived anywhere else.
So let's see if there's any public comment. Any members of the public? Anyone online? There's no one here, that's for sure. Okay. So, do we have enough information to close, do you think?
It's a sketch, so yeah.
That's
well,
true.
do we need to see? Can we just require something of a reconfiguration of the road? Or is that all just
A diagram, you mean, when they come back?
Do you need any more drawings? In other words.
Okay.
Yes, I can submit, an updated. I just wanted to kind of get an idea of where we were going.
No, hang on a minute. I'm asking Marla.
Oh, okay.
Can we just, let's assume for the sake of discussion that we approve the thing. Can we approve it as it stands and just write our conditions about the road in language, or do we need to have a revised site plan that shows something more?
So they need to, this is a sketch, so they need to come back for the next stage of review anyway.
Okay.
This is not a binding
All right,
conversation.
that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay.
And it'll be, what will that be, a site plan? What will that be called?
No, it'll be a combined master plan and preliminary plat.
Right. This is
Okay.
You'll see them 2 more times under our current regulations.
Okay. Fair enough.
You're going to get sick of us.
Not at all. By the way, I did watch last week's meeting, and I like the way you guys are approaching the whole South Burlington thing.
Good.
I've
Thank you.
lived here my whole life, and you know, if only the board would have done that before they built all around the airport, it might have saved a lot of hardship down the road. And I really respect all the things you talked about last week, and it was pretty interesting.
Thank you. So I would entertain a motion. Because it's sketch, I don't have to entertain a motion.
You can just tell them, have a nice night. Yeah.
Have a nice night. Thank you for
Thank you
coming.
so
We'll see
much.
you again in the future.
Thank you.
You'd think I had figured that out by now, but
So we have one set of minutes that I did not have a chance to review before I published, but I sort of did a quick skim and I did note there were some errors. I also wasn't at the meeting, so do you guys have any comments on the January 3rd minutes? Did you want to pull them up?
I think I might have ranted and raved a little more than was conveyed in here, so I'm glad that it wasn't. So I'm fine with the minutes as is.
Okay. There were, I mean, not having been there, I don't know exactly what was said, but there were some things where people, like, maybe names seemed wrong, or like there was a this or that seemed like it didn't make sense to me.
I don't do ranting and raving.
Good, thank you. You've learned to filter that out.
I get paid extra.
I just want to point out my last name has a T in it.
your last name is what?
Johnston.
Johnston. Okay, entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes with Mr. Johnstone's name corrected.
Are there any other is there a second?
Second.
Any other corrections? All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? They are approved. And the meeting is over. Thank you, everyone. Long night.